Okay, so today we are formulas. We are working to transform formulas. A formula is an equation which defines a relationship of one variable to other variables or numbers. So, for instance, does anybody know what RT and D stand for? Yes. Rate times time equals distance. Perfect. So it has a relationship. Your parents are like masters at this. You've been sitting in the back of that car for many years and saying, Mom, how long until we get there? And then they can give you a pretty good estimate. They're doing this math in their head. So when you see this little semicolon, it means solve for t. Get t alone. So since r times t equals d, since what's happening to t is it's being multiplied by t, we do the inverse operations. I do have a poster up there. So inverse operations. The opposite of multiplying is dividing. So I'm going to divide both sides with what I want to get rid of, not the t. The t stays there. So I'm dividing both sides by what? R. And then we get r's cross cancel, t equals d over r. Now what we would say is t is given in terms of t, in this case, let's just take one step back. To begin with, right now, d is given in terms of r and t. Now, t is given in terms of d and r, okay? All right, does anybody know what this equation is? Science Academy always knew this one. Force.
Force equals mass times acceleration.
Right. Perfect for car accidents, right?
Yeah.
A big heavy object and how fast it's going equals the amount of force. So why don't you guys pause the recording and try and solve for A. All right, so what am I doing? Let's go with Jessie. Not Jessie, sorry, Jamie.
You divide both sides by m.
Dividing both sides by m. We start, F is given in terms of m and a, because F is alone. We're going to divide both sides by what? M. And we get?
A equals F over m.
Right. And then you have to, when they ask you to solve for that variable, you need to eventually turn it around. Now, A is given in terms of F and M. Does that make sense, the language that I'm using? Okay. It just means A is alone and F and M are on the other side. We're solving for the A when we say A is given in terms of F and M. All right, so now we're moving on to area equals 1/2 base times height. We really don't even need that big times situation. Area equals 1/2 BH. Now they're all three multiplied together, so I don't need that multiplication. Just next to means multiplication. So the first thing I'm going to want you to do is get rid of your denominator. What is your denominator? No, what's in the denominator? B is not. 2. So how does it get into the denominator? It's being divided, right? So what's the opposite of dividing? Multiply both sides by 2. Okay? And now I can cross cancel. BH equals 2A. Now what are we doing? Gracie?
You divide both sides by b.
Dividing both sides by b. And H equals 2A over B. And then I have to turn it around because I want H in terms of, when you say H in terms of A and B, H is given in terms of A and B. We don't mention the numbers. Okay, so to begin with, we had area is given in terms of base and height, or B and H. A is given in terms of B and H. Now, I have height is given in terms of A and B. And if given a capital A, you need to keep it a capital A. If given a lowercase b, you need to keep it a lowercase b. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, next.
Did you record?
Yep, I'm recording. Okay, next. This one is similar to the last one. It's no different. Why don't you start by telling me, okay, right away we have V is given in terms of R and H, just the variables, right? Now, how do I get rid of that denominator, everybody?
Multiply by 3.
We're multiplying both sides by 3. So V equals 1/3 pi R squared. This is one term. So I'm multiplying only once, not each piece.
It's 1/3, yeah, pi r squared h.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Multiply by 3 over 1. Multiply by 3 over 1. Now we can cross cancel, right? And we are left with pi r squared h equals 3v. Now, what operation is happening with pi r squared h? So what is the opposite of multiplication?
Division.
By, what do we want to get rid of?
Pi r squared h.
We can do a twofer. Pi r squared, divide by pi and r squared. Cancel, cancel. H equals 3 times the volume over pi times the radius squared. Does anybody know what formula this is, by the way?
Oh, it's for a sphere.
No, that's
Or
not
wait,
fair.
no.
It's a third of a cylinder. It's a third. So it's actually a cone. So now H is given in terms of V and R.
Oh yeah, it would be pi r squared times 3.
Yeah. So questions? Okay. No questions? No. Okay. Does anybody know what this one is?
Oh, Fahrenheit equals 9/5 Celsius plus 32.
Yep, Fahrenheit to Celsius. Fahrenheit's what we use here. Celsius is what the rest of the world uses. So, this is a two-step equation. So what's the easiest piece to get rid of your, to get that C alone? Peel it like an onion, outside first.
Onions have nails.
Right. So, what am I getting rid of first? Anybody?
Oh.
Julia.
The 5?
Normally, yes, but then I've got that 32 to contend with now that there's a plus sign. It's not all like A. It's not A times B times C. We were able to get rid of the fraction because it was straight multiplication, but what you're seeing here is a plus sign. So what would I try, Julia?
Would you subtract 32?
Yep, it's just like a two-step equation. Subtract 32, subtract 32, and now we're left with see, if you were to multiply to get rid of and multiply by 5, you'd have to multiply the 32 by 5 too, and that's too much math for me. So,
I like how the math teachers.
yeah. So what would I do next, Julia?
Would you come out with the same answer if you got rid of the 5 first? Even though that's not
Yeah, but it's more complicated. I'll show you. Let's first finish this one. Now what do we do?
now you divide by 5.
Let's get rid of the whole fraction. How can I get rid of the whole fraction? Let's make that fraction equal
Times the reciprocal.
times the reciprocal. Multiply both sides by 5/9. Right? And here it's going to cancel. And over here, just leave it. Don't multiply it. Now, if you had done the other way, and you wanted to multiply both sides by 5. Here's what I don't like. This will cancel, right? But then you got to multiply the 5 times the 32. And then I got to do some math. On this side, I'd get 5f, and 5 times 2 is 10, and 5 times, carry the 1, as 15, 16, 160, and then you've got the, 9c still left. See, it's just, and you still got to get rid of that. Minus 160, minus 160, 5f minus 160 equals 9c. Divide by 9, divide by 9, divide by 9. It's just ugly. So undo your addition and subtraction first so you're not left with a big ugly fraction statement. And I don't want you to multiply this out because there's more room for error. All it says is solve for the variable. Don't do too much. You're more likely to make a mistake with your multiplying than not doing anything at all. So just leave it alone. We undo the addition and subtraction first. Now C is given in terms of F. Questions? All right. So this is very similar. Why don't you try this one on your own? Pause the recording. Try the next one. Elise, you're going to lead us through. So what would I do first? Same thing as last time.
What I did, I subtracted p from both sides.
Perfect. Subtract P, subtract P. You know what, let's first do this. Let's get our T is given in terms of, oh, they didn't say it, okay. So I'm going to subtract P from both sides. And now I'm left with T minus P equals PRT. Now, what do you want to get alone?
What I did is the r, so I divided by pt.
Perfect. Dividing both sides by PT, and now you are left, and stop. Do not try and simplify this. Okay, if you simplify, you are likely to get it wrong, so don't. All they're asking for is get it alone. Right now, you don't have the skills to simplify this. You will do this by the end of this course. Because what this really means is T over PT minus P over PT equals R. So if you're going to simplify, this is really what you end up, T over P, little t, minus 1 over T equals R. Did you get it right when you simplified it?
No.
So don't try and simplify unless you really understand that. All I'm asking you for is get this alone and stop. It's going to be the hardest thing you do this year is just stop because you're going to want to keep going. Yes? You had a question?
I didn't.
So this is what it is simplified. Okay, now R is given in terms of T, P, and little t. All right, this one's a little bit trickier because now they need a P, and a P is in here and in here. That's the same thing. So I'm noticing the same number in both. Does anybody think they know what we could do? We do it the whole second semester. You had a little bit of it in your homework, yes? It's not a like term. We are going to factor because they have a common factor. What is that common factor? P. So I'm going to factor the P out of both. Factoring the P. And then look what happens. If I take P, right, and I divide this by P, because factoring is really kind of dividing, what's left? What's left when you divide P by P? 1. Not 0. Any number divided by itself, any quantity divided by itself equals 1. 5 over 5. P over P. Happy face over happy face. Right. Any quantity over a quantity equals 1. So when I divide that by p, when I divide the p out of this term, what's left?
RT.
Plus RT equals t. So do you understand what we did? We factored. Now, we want to get p alone, so what do we have to do? Notice, what's happening to the p, what does the parenthesis mean? Multiplication of 1 plus RT. So what do I have to do? What's the inverse of that? Divide by 1 plus RT. Divide by 1 plus RT. Big T over 1 plus RT equals now big P. Questions? And then I have to write P in terms of big T over 1 plus RT. Does anybody know what this formula was for? Okay, this formula is the total, is an interest formula, is like, it's money. Right, this is the total is equal to the principal plus principal times rate times time. That's interest. This is interest. So this whole thing is really so this is your principal plus your interest. So what I have in my account, the total, is equal to principal, the amount of money I started with, plus the interest. So if I give my money to the bank, if I give them $1,000 and I want to invest it, they're going to give me back my principal, $1,000, plus the interest, the $100 that I make for putting it in the bank. So it'll be $1,100. Okay, now, very similar. You're doing the same steps. Let's see if you can do it. Pause the recording. I will give you a hint. Factoring is involved. Okay, now let's try it. What would I do first? Somebody new. Okay, Brianne?
We would have to factor the x.
Good. We're going to factor the x out. Let's hope they do that. Good. And we're left with a b plus c. Next step.
We would have to divide by b plus c on both sides.
Divide both sides by b plus c. The quantity b plus c. And now we're left with a over b plus c equals x. And then we turn it around, so x is given in terms of a, b, and c. This is really part of the standard form of the quadratic formula, quadratic equation. No, sorry, linear equation, linear. Wouldn't be quadratic. Okay, standard form of a linear equation. Quadratic would involve little squares at the top. Okay, one more problem.
I have a question about the
Yeah,
next one.
sure.
Aren't there two x's, so wouldn't it be 2x?
No. No, because I factored it. It'd be like, remember when we had like 15x plus 5y. What is the common factor? 5. What your common factor here was x. It's not two x's. I divided by an x here and I divided one here, and I'm left with 3x plus y. So when I divide if I were to multiply it back, Noah, right? If I'm to multiply that back after I factored the x, what would it equal? What would that be? Bx, and what would that be?
CX.
So do you see it has to equal the same thing?
Yeah.
Okay, it's not a 2x. All right, this is the last one. It's kind of tricky. A equals 1 over x plus y. So when you have something in the denominator, you really can't get rid of it right away. The very first thing, if you're solving for something that's in the denominator, you have to get it out of the denominator. So what are we going to do? Multiply the whole denominator out. So I'm going to multiply by the quantity x plus y, multiply by x plus y. Now you can do this two different ways. Okay? Okay, I'm going to do a times x plus y equals, these two cancel, 1. A times x plus y equals 1. Okay? Now, we can, one way we can do this is we can divide by a. X plus y equals 1 over a. And then what? Minus y. We get x equals 1 over a minus y. That's one way to do it. I can distribute ax plus ay equals 1. And we're trying to get that x alone, right? So I can subtract this out. Minus ay minus ay. I get ax equals 1 minus ay. Divide by a. X equals 1 minus ay over a. Now they might look different. The difference is this is simplified. They're exactly the same. So I don't care what method you take. Do you understand? Let me go back through that one more time. One method, we always multiply whatever's in the denominator out. Get it out. Multiply the entire quantity. And then I'm here. Method number 1 is distribute. Then subtract ay. Now divide by a. Okay? That's one way. Method number 2 would be, if you have it here, a times x plus y equals 1. Divide by a. X plus y equals 1 over a. Subtract y. X equals 1 over a minus y. Now this is just simplified version. Because what does this really mean? Let's look at what this really means. 1 over a minus ay over a. These two can be canceled. Do you understand? Then it's 1 over a minus y. So I don't care which way you do that. Do you understand one way? Goal is, get it alone. Try not to simplify when you're here. Because at this point, if you try and simplify, you're more likely to get it wrong, and you had it right. Does that make sense? All right, so tonight, I know it says 1 through 34 all. You just do as many as you can. Towards the end, they get hard. Just go for it. Try it. Can't hurt you. Okay, are there any questions? That's it. Yes.
Will we be checking our homework tomorrow or on Tuesday?
Tomorrow, because this is on it.